It's strange how silence can feel heavier than words. That night, the rain tapped against our kitchen window like it was trying to warn me, soft, steady, relentless. I still remember every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock above the sink, and my heartbeat, the one I swear I could hear echoing inside my chest. That's when she walked in. Rachel, carefree, smiling, humming to herself like she didn't have a care in the world. Her hair was damp from the drizzle outside, her perfume a mix of lavender and something faintly sweet, something unfamiliar. She tossed her purse on the counter, slipped off her heels, and said, "Hey, babe. Sorry I'm late, traffic was awful." I wanted to believe her, God, I wanted to. But there's this thing that happens when the truth's already taken root inside you. Even if you try to ignore it, it grows, quietly, cruelly. For weeks I'd been feeling it, the distance, the half smiles, the excuses, late meetings, phone face down, the way she laughed at texts she never showed me. And still I convinced myself it was nothing, that marriage just changes. That maybe she was tired, but that night I knew, not because of what she said, but how she said it. Her voice carried something light, too light, the kind of tone people use when they think the worst is already behind them. And for her, maybe it was, for me, it was just beginning. I'd found out 2 nights before, not from a friend, not from a stranger, from her phone. I hadn't planned to look, but she'd left it unlocked on the nightstand while she showered. A message preview popped up: "Ethan, last night was perfect." My stomach dropped. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did, and that was it. That was all it took to unravel 10 years of marriage. There were photos, messages, plans. Little jokes between them, the kind couples make when they're falling in love. Except she already had someone who loved her. Me, I didn't confront her then. I couldn't. Something inside me needed to see, needed proof that what I'd built wasn't just crumbling in my imagination. So I waited, watched, and when I finally gathered enough courage, I did something quiet, something painful. I wrote her a letter, not an angry one, not a goodbye letter either, just the truth. The kind that bleeds out slowly when you've got nowhere left to hide. I told her I knew. I told her I loved her anyway. I told her I was sorry for whatever part of me had gone missing long before she found someone else. And then I left the house exactly the way she liked it. Candles on the table, dinner on the stove, 2 glasses of wine, and on her plate next to a folded napkin I placed the letter, beside it a single rose. The same kind I used to bring her every Friday, back when she said it made her feel seen. So when she walked in that night, carefree and humming, she didn't notice it right away. She didn't even see the candlelight flickering or smell the pasta still warm on the stove. She just talked about her day, about the rain, about how her coworker got promoted, and I just stood there, watching. Feeling something inside me quietly break apart, not in anger but in acceptance. She finally saw the letter, her voice trailed off mid-sentence. "Alex, what's this?" I didn't answer, I couldn't. Her fingers hesitated before touching the paper. She unfolded it slowly, eyes moving left to right, line by line. I saw her lips tremble when she reached the part where I wrote, "I don't hate you, Rachel. I just wish you'd told me when you stopped looking at me the same way." Her breath caught when she read the last line, "I loved you enough to let you go quietly." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Just the rain outside, the candlelight flickering between us, and the sound of something breaking, maybe trust, maybe love, maybe both. Then she whispered, "You read my messages." It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. That's the part that hurts the most. She wasn't sorry I knew, she was sorry she'd been caught. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. I felt invisible, Alex. You were always busy, always somewhere else." "He listened to me." Her voice cracked on that last sentence, and I wanted to scream to tell her I'd listened too, that I'd always been there, but the words just wouldn't come, because maybe she was right. Maybe I had been too quiet, too distant, too caught up in my own little world, but still, nothing could justify what she did. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. And I said the only truth I had left. "You stopped choosing me." She cried softly at first, then harder. Her mascara ran down her cheeks, dripping onto the letter she held in trembling hands. I wanted to hold her, to comfort her. To believe that maybe somehow we could fix this, but deep down I knew. Some things once broken don't go back the same way. The rain grew heavier outside, the candles flickered. And she whispered the question that still echoes in my head. "What do you want me to do, Alex?" I looked at her, at the woman I'd shared a life with, the woman I once thought I'd grow old beside, and said quietly, "I want you to finish your dinner. Read that letter one more time, and then decide if you still recognize the man who wrote it." She stood there frozen, eyes glassy, her breath uneven. The silence stretched between us until it felt unbearable, like a held breath that never comes out. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "I need some air." She grabbed her purse and walked out into the rain. I didn't stop her. I just watched the door close behind her and listened to the sound of the storm swallowing her footsteps. And in that moment, for the first time in our marriage, I realized I didn't know if she was ever coming back. The morning after Rachel left, the rain had stopped. But everything still felt soaked, the air, the walls, my thoughts. Her half-empty coffee mug sat on the counter, lipstick smudge at the rim. Her jacket still hung by the door. and her scent lingered faint but constant like a ghost refusing to leave. I stood in the kitchen staring at the empty chair across from me. It's strange, the human brain gets used to presence. The sound of another person's footsteps, the clatter of keys hitting the table, the laugh that breaks the silence. And when all of that vanishes overnight, the quiet doesn't feel peaceful, it feels wrong. I tried going to work that morning, pretending everything was fine. I smiled when people said good morning. I even cracked a joke during a meeting. But my hands shook every time I checked my phone. No new messages. That night I drove around town aimlessly. The streets glistened under the streetlights, puddles reflecting neon signs and traffic signals. Small-town silence, interrupted only by tires slicing through leftover rain. I found myself parked outside the Oak Diner. That was her favorite spot, a little place with terrible coffee and perfect pancakes. I sat there for almost an hour watching the windows, half expecting to see her inside. She wasn't, but I saw him, Ethan. I didn't know his face until that night. I'd only seen pieces, a reflection in a photo, a name in a text. But now there he was, tall, confident, the kind of man who always seems like he belongs everywhere. He laughed easily, leaning forward, his hand brushing the woman's arm across the booth. Not Rachel, not that night, someone else. And somehow that made it worse, because in that moment I realized. She wasn't special to him, she was just another chapter in his story, but he'd been the whole damn book in hers. Back home, I scrolled through her social media. She hadn't posted anything new, no updates, no photos, just old memories, still smiling, still ours. Then I noticed the subtle change, her relationship status gone. A small edit, but it hit harder than any goodbye ever could. I closed the app and sat there in the dark. The hum of the fridge was the only sound left. That's when my phone buzzed. Rachel, I'm staying with a friend for a while, please don't text me. A friend? Right, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know who I'd be responding to anymore. Days turned into weeks. I kept expecting the hurt to fade, but it didn't, it just changed shape. At first it was sharp like glass under my ribs. Then it became dull, heavy like carrying a weight I couldn't set down. I found her things everywhere. Her book on the nightstand open to a page she never finished, her slippers by the couch. A grocery list in her handwriting tucked under a magnet on the fridge. Milk, apples, cinnamon, hugs. It broke me seeing that word hugs. She used to write it at the end of every list as a joke. Now it felt like a goodbye I never got to answer. One afternoon, I ran into her sister at the store. She looked at me with that mixture of pity and uncertainty that people reserve for funerals. She's okay, she said softly. She just needs time. Time, that's what everyone says when they don't know how to fix you. A few days later, I got another message. Rachel, I'll come by next week to get my things. No greeting, no signature, just logistics. I spent that night cleaning the house, not for her, but for me. It felt like the only thing I could control. I boxed up her clothes, her perfume, her photos. When I reached our wedding album, I froze. The cover was dusty, but the faces inside still smiled like nothing could touch them. Her eyes sparkled in every photo. Mine did too back then. I closed the album slowly and whispered to no one. Where did we lose it, Ratch? The day she came to get her things, the weather matched my mood, gray, uncommitted, heavy with unshed rain. She knocked softly. When I opened the door, she looked different, lighter somehow but not happier, like someone who's been pretending to be fine for too long. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. That was it, no hugs, no tears. Just two people standing in a doorway, pretending not to remember how it used to feel. She gathered her boxes. I didn't help, I just watched her. Every step she took felt like a chapter closing. And then, as she was leaving, she turned back. Ethan's taking me to Seattle next month, she said. I thought you should know. Seattle, we used to dream about moving there someday. I nodded, forcing a small smile. That's great. I hope it's everything you wanted. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. She just whispered, take care of yourself, and left. The door clicked shut, and that sound, that soft, final click, was louder than any goodbye I'd ever heard. The next few months were quiet, too quiet. I focused on work, tried to rebuild a life that didn't include her. But some nights I'd wake up thinking I heard her footsteps in the hall. Other nights I'd dream of her laughing and wake up to silence that felt cruel. But slowly, something started to shift. I began running again, cooking for myself, rediscovering the music I used to love before our playlists became ours. It wasn't healing, not yet. But it was movement, and movement, I learned, is its own kind of grace. Then one night, almost 6 months after she left, I saw her name light up my phone again. Rachel, can I come by? No explanation, no context. Just those 4 words, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, I replied me, sure. When I hung up, the air in the house felt charged, not like the beginning of something new, but like the moment before a storm breaks. I didn't know it yet, but that night when she walked through my door again, she wouldn't be the same woman who left, and neither was I. It was a Thursday night, late, quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like the world's holding its breath. I'd just come home from a late shift, rain again, soft, cold, familiar. The porch light flickered as I unlocked the door, and that's when I saw it. Her car parked at the end of the driveway. My pulse picked up before my brain could catch up, and when I stepped inside, she was there, sitting on the edge of the couch, soaked from the rain, her hair clinging to her face. Rachel, for a second I thought maybe I was dreaming. But then she looked up and I saw it, the kind of sadness that doesn't come from guilt, it comes from being broken. "Hey," I said softly. She didn't answer. Her lips trembled like she was holding back a storm. Then she whispered, I didn't know where else to go. Time froze. Every part of me wanted to run to her, to hold her, to tell her it was okay. But another part, the one that had lived through her silence, her betrayal, her absence, stayed still. "Sit down," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She looked around the living room like she was searching for traces of herself. There weren't many left. "Do you want a towel?" I asked. She nodded. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed, and in that brief touch I felt it, familiarity, history, and something like grief. She wrapped the towel around her shoulders and said quietly, "He's gone, Alex." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to, Ethan, but I let the silence stretch. Sometimes silence says what words can't. "He said he loved me," she continued, voice trembling. "Then last week he told me he needed space. A day later I saw him at a bar with someone else." She swallowed hard. "I thought I could handle it, but I can't, I feel." "Used?" I asked gently. She looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yeah." I nodded slowly. "Now you know how it feels." Her face crumpled, not in anger, in understanding. She started crying then, not the quiet, polite kind of crying. It was raw. The kind that shakes your shoulders, that pulls sound out of you like it's been trapped for too long, and I just stood there, watching. Part of me wanted to reach for her, to comfort her the way I always used to. But another part, the part that had read every text, that had listened to every lie, kept my hands at my sides. When she finally caught her breath, she whispered, "I don't deserve your kindness." I exhaled slowly. "You don't." Her head dropped, but I added, "I also don't want to be the man who can't forgive." She looked up, confusion in her eyes. "I'm not saying I forgive you yet, but I'm saying maybe someday I could." For a long moment we just sat there in the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Then she said, almost in disbelief, "I thought you'd hate me forever." I smiled sadly. "Hate's too heavy to carry, Rachel, and I've been carrying enough." She nodded slowly, like she understood something she should have known a long time ago. Then she whispered, "I thought he was what I needed. He made me feel alive again. But it was just noise. You were the quiet, the home, the thing I didn't realize I needed until I lost it." Her words landed like stones in my chest. I looked at her, at the woman who had once been my whole world. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger who was trying to find her way back to who she used to be. "Why now?" I asked softly. "Why come back tonight?" She wiped her tears and said, "Because I finally realized. You were the only one who ever loved me for me. Not for who I pretended to be." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but love isn't a switch you can flip back on after the lights go out, so I said the only thing that felt true. "You can stay, but just for tonight." Her eyes widened, then softened. "Thank you," she whispered. I made her some tea. She followed me into the kitchen, her footsteps quiet, hesitant. Every movement felt like walking through a memory. She held the mug with both hands, staring into the steam. "Do you ever think about us?" she asked. "Every day," I said, then after a pause, "but not the way I used to." She nodded. "I miss who we were." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I do too." Later that night, she fell asleep on the couch. The rain had eased into a soft drizzle. I watched her from the doorway for a long time, her chest rising and falling, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. I remembered our first apartment, the nights we stayed up talking about everything and nothing. The way she used to fall asleep with her head on my chest, murmuring half-dreamed sentences. I remembered how much I loved her. And how much it cost me. When I finally went to bed, I didn't close the door, just left it slightly open, letting the faint sound of rain drift in. It felt like closure, not complete but beginning. I woke before dawn. The first light of morning spilled through the curtains, pale and gray. She was still asleep, curled under a blanket I'd left for her. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger, just peace. The kind that comes after a storm finally spends itself. I whispered to myself, "You can stay broken or you can start again, but you can't do both." And I knew which one I was choosing. Morning came quietly. No thunder, no rain, just soft gray light spilling through the windows. The storm had passed. Outside, the streets were still wet, the world washed clean. For the first time in months, the silence didn't hurt, it just was. I walked into the living room. Rachel was awake, sitting on the couch with the blanket still wrapped around her. Her eyes were puffy, her face pale. She looked like someone who'd been running for miles and finally realized she didn't know where she was going. "Morning," I said softly. She gave a faint smile. "Hey." The air between us was fragile, full of everything we didn't say last night. I poured 2 cups of coffee out of habit. Old instincts die hard. She took one, fingers trembling around the mug. We sat across from each other just like we used to every morning. Except this time there was no routine, just two people trying to navigate the wreckage of something that used to feel like home. She spoke first. I didn't sleep much. Yeah, I said, me neither. Then silence again, the kind that fills every corner of a room until it becomes its own presence. She finally said, you didn't ask me to stay. I looked at her. Would it have changed anything if I did? She shook her head slowly. No, but I think I needed to hear it anyway. I sighed, Rachel, I'm tired of holding on to things that hurt. I spent months wondering what I did wrong. Replaying every moment, every fight, every quiet dinner where I thought we were fine. And maybe I wasn't perfect, I know that. But what you did, it broke something I can't rebuild. Her eyes filled with tears again. I know, and I'm sorry. I swear, Alex, if I could undo it. You can't, I interrupted gently, and that's okay. She blinked, confused. I mean, it has to be okay because we can't live inside that pain forever. She looked down at her coffee, whispering, you were always the better person. I almost laughed, not out of pride, but exhaustion. No, Rachel, I wasn't better, I was just the one who stayed. Her lip trembled. Why are you being so kind? Because hating you won't heal me, I said quietly. And I think I finally understand that. For a while we just sat there. No tears, no raised voices, just a soft kind of understanding, the kind that hurts and heals at the same time. Outside, a single beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, hitting the kitchen window. Dust floated in the light like slow-moving stars. She smiled faintly. Remember our first morning here, you burned the toast. I chuckled. You said it was abstract breakfast. She laughed. The sound was small but real, and for a split second it almost felt like we were still us, almost. Then she said, I'm leaving today. I just needed to say goodbye properly. My chest tightened, but I nodded. You don't owe me anything. I know, she said, but I wanted to. She stood and walked toward the window, her reflection ghosted in the glass. I don't think I loved him, Alex, she said quietly. I think I just wanted to feel like someone else for a while, someone free, someone who didn't carry the weight of mistakes or expectations. I didn't respond. Sometimes truth doesn't need a reply, just space to exist. She turned back to me. I never stopped loving you, she whispered, and I said the words that had been waiting inside me for months. I believe you. But love alone isn't enough anymore. She nodded, a tear slipped down her cheek, and then she said something I'll never forget. Maybe love isn't meant to last forever. Maybe it just shows up when we need it and leaves when we've learned what it came to teach. I swallowed hard. Maybe. We stood there for a moment that felt longer than it should have, the kind of silence that carries a lifetime. Then I walked her to the door. No dramatic goodbye, no promises, just quiet acceptance. She hesitated on the porch, rainwater still glistening on the steps. The air smelled of earth and endings. She looked at me one last time, and this time I didn't see regret in her eyes, I saw gratitude. Take care, Alex, she said softly. You too, Rachel. She walked down the driveway, her car door shut. The engine started, and then she was gone. When the sound faded, I stepped outside. The wind was cool against my face. The sky had opened up, streaks of pale blue pushing through the clouds. I stood there breathing, just breathing. It wasn't relief, it wasn't victory. It was peace, small, fragile, but real. Inside the house, her coffee mug still sat on the table, half full, cooling slowly. I picked it up, washed it, and placed it in the cupboard. Right where it used to belong, only now it was just a cup. Later that evening, I sat by the window, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. I thought about how endings never come all at once. They arrive in pieces, a text you don't get anymore, a voice you stop hearing, a face that fades from the doorway. But sometimes the hardest endings give birth to quiet beginnings. And as the sun slipped behind the hills, painting the small town gold and gray, I whispered to the empty room, some people come into your life to love you, some to break you, and some to teach you how to love yourself when they're gone.